I'm doing my PhD thesis, and currently I'm working on spiders and carnivorous plants. And what I'm working on is just trying to investigate the relationship of spiders and carnivorous plants themselves. So usually spiders interact with carnivorous plants by being parasites of the plant. What spiders will do is they'll build their web over the top of the plant and sit at the top of their web and then wait for the attraction mechanisms of the plant to work to catch insects. But instead of the plant catching the insects, the spider will catch the insects, and the spider will use them to eat their own food. Yeah, and so some spiders will actually dive into the pitcher and grab some of the prey and then pull back out by the silk on their abdomen. And some spiders will just build the web over the top, and some spiders will actually sit inside the pitcher plant and have the web coming out from there and wait for food to come and land on the web. So some spiders use it as a retreat too. So pretty much I'm just investigating how these things interact, and I'm working here at the Botanical Garden at Highlands here.
So you go gather the spiders?
Yeah, I have several different methods of how I gather the spiders, and I bring them back here and I see what types they are, and I sort of mark in the field what they were doing when I found them, and then I can more accurately determine who's doing what. I'm identifying a spider right now that's actually an ant mimicking spider. This spider looks very much like an ant, with having a very thin body, and it actually moves and collects food along with ants, and it lives with ants, but it doesn't actually eat ants. And it's mimicry because the spider looks like the ants, because many predators won't eat ants. So they don't eat the spider too because they think it's an ant. So it's pretty neat. So there's a lot of, I've never actually seen this spider before until I came here to the Highlands. So there's a lot of neat spiders here that I've actually never even seen before. We are in the Highlands Botanical Station bog. So the bog is actually in the Norfolk, not Norfolk, the Highlands Garden, Highlands Botanical Garden.
Okay, so it looks like we're right here on the edge of the Lindenwood Lake?
Yes. There's a lake there.
Well, is it common to have a bog right on the edge of a lake?
Yes, usually it is, because usually bogs need to be very wet. So oftentimes you find bogs on the edges of lakes, sometimes surrounding the entire lake. For instance, in Lindenwood Lake, there's a bog on this side. There's also a bog across on the other side, on the other part of the trail. So this is just one of really two parts of this bog here.
And what creates a bog?
Well, there's several characteristics that define a bog, and several things that have to happen to create a bog. And one of those is that it has to have low nutrients. So specifically, nitrogen and phosphorus have to be low in the region, and a high acidity. So these characteristics lead to certain plant life growing in edges of the bog, or edges of the lake itself. And when this happens, you have large sphagnum mats, as you can see here, and often you have carnivorous plants, which actually use this low nitrogen and low phosphorus environment to proliferate, because many different types of plants can't survive in these low nutrient areas. So carnivorous plants survive in these areas by supplementing their nutrients by catching insects. So they catch insects which are high in nitrogen and phosphorus so that they can survive when other plants can't.
Wow. So what kind of carnivorous plants do we have here?
Well, on the edges of Lindenwood Lake, we have two main types of pitcher plants, and that is Sarracenia Purpurea, the low-lying cup-shaped pitcher plant, and we also have Sarracenia Rubra, which is the sweet pitcher plant. And there have also been other pitcher plants planted by the Highlands Botanical Garden staff, but they haven't really spread as much as these two have. And in addition to these two types of pitcher plants, we have a sundew, Drosera rotundifolia, which is also proliferating along the banks of Lindenwood Lake as well. So we have these three main types of proliferating pitcher plants, and we also have, interestingly, a cross between the low-lying pitcher plant and the sweet pitcher plant. So these two can actually interbreed and have a pitcher plant that is kind of tall and kind of fat. So it has both characteristics at the same time.
Maybe you could describe how a pitcher plant works.
Sure. So you're looking at here is the low-lying purple pitcher plant, which is Sarracenia Purpurea. And you can see here it has this region here along the top here, which is called the hood. And then along this region here, you have the lip. And you have this keel down here, which is purely for photosynthesis, for gathering light energy. And you have these red veins leading down into the cavity. And you also have these downward facing hairs along the hood here. So this lip here is what produces most of the nectar. And nectar is assumed to be the main attractant for insects. So insects will land anywhere on this pitcher, be attracted toward this nectar region here, and once they go to that nectar region, it is extremely slippery along this. So they'll drink the nectar and eventually lose their footing and fall in. If they climb on this hood region here, these downward facing hairs allow them to move down, but it does not allow them to move back up. So they are forced to go lower and lower and lower until they reach a very smooth region just below those downward facing hairs where they fall in again. And this red pigmentation is also assumed to attract insects and lead down toward the cavity, and it is also lined with nectaries as well. So all these adaptations are meant to catch insects and spiders and to supplement their low nitrogen and phosphorus environment.
So what's the liquid that's in there?
The liquid is mostly rainwater. It's mostly rainwater, and it is long to be assumed that this low-lying pitcher plant did not produce enzymes at all. In fact, most of the enzymes were thought to be produced by bacteria that live inside the pitchers. However, recently it has been found that the pitcher does produce small amounts of enzymes, and even though bacteria do supplement the largest amount of enzymes. So they have enzymes mixed with rainwater in there that digests a lot of the insects that fall in.
And there's like a whole cluster here. Is that one plant?
That's a good question. And the fact is, you really can't tell. You really can't tell if this is a plant and this is a separate plant, or if this is the same plant. Because what these pitcher plants will do is that they will send out underground stems. They're called rhizomes, that will go underground and pop up at a new location and produce another quote-unquote plant. However, it's really the same plant, they're just different portions. So it could be this one was produced from seed, which was from this flower here, or it could have been that this one was produced via rhizome. It's really hard to tell.
Right, and so what we're seeing here, this is actually in seed at this moment?
Yes, this is has passed its bloom stage. Usually it has these really pretty pink and reddish petals that come down along this edge here. And you can see the swollen ovary here, and this is what is holding and what is developing right now most of the seeds for the plant. And the seed, this entire capsule here can produce close to 500 to 600 individual seeds, which are extremely small.
Wow.
And usually the range of distribution from this seed pod, once it opens, is only about 5 centimeters away from the individual plant. So the plant may produce seed and it may disperse, but usually they don't go very far. So that's why these seeds float, and they float on water. So oftentimes they'll fall down, hit a water source, float away, and land at another place, and they can then propagate there. These are the sundews. Their Latin name is Drosera rotundifolia, and they can go from this dark red color that you're seeing here to a lightish green color. And they are also carnivorous, and they catch insects and sometimes spiders by having these long stalks, and on the ends of these stalks they have little droplets of nectar. So one of their main prey items are ants, and oftentimes they will attract ants by these nectar, and once the ants crawl onto the leaves, they start drinking the nectar, and before they know it, they're all wrapped up in this sticky droplet, and they can't get away. And oftentimes, the Drosera will actually move, the leaf will move so that it will actually surround its prey, and then it will digest it via the enzymes within these droplets. The low-lying pitcher plant that you saw before is actually the only type of pitcher plant that does not have a hood, and all other types of pitcher plant, at least in the genus Sarracenia, have a hood that comes over the top, so that limits the amount of rain that falls into it.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because it seemed like the rainwater would really dilute
Yeah,
what's going on in there.
and most other pitcher plants have a lot more enzyme production than the low-lying purple pitcher plant do.
So this is more like a Jack in the Pulpit shape is what I
Yeah.
think of when I see this.
And their common name, they're usually called the trumpets. You're looking at here is Sarracenia Rubra, which is called the sweet pitcher plant. And this pitcher plant is very similar to the yellow trumpet, Sarracenia flava, that you saw previously, in that it has the hood that covers the top, except that its coloration is not as bright yellow as the yellow pitcher plant, and it's usually this greenish color. Also, the flowers look very similar to the low-lying pitcher plant, Sarracenia Purpurea, and they also have a similar coloration. You can see some of the dying petals here, the dehissing petals, and they are a deep red coloration, which is also similar to the low-lying pitcher plant.
Okay, what other plants are we seeing right here around the pitcher plant?
Well, around the pitcher plant, we have the Sphagnum Moss, which is down in the bottom here. You can see the Sphagnum Moss is fairly thick, and it goes fairly deep. This is often found with carnivorous plants, not just Sarracenia purpurea itself, but almost all carnivorous plants, because it enjoys the same habitat. We also see cranberry. There's a lot of cranberry stems growing here, and here's the unripe cranberries here. So cranberry also loves this habitat as well, and we see a lot of these sedges and grasses.
Well, what about little like animals? What kind of do frogs like bogs?
Absolutely, and so frogs are amphibians, so they'll love any kind of wet environment. So bogs are perfect for frogs and also perfect for salamanders. In fact, I often find many salamanders found around here. And that's interesting because lots of organisms are caught inside these pitcher plants as well. In fact, yesterday I found a salamander inside the pitcher. So I find frogs inside of pitchers, and I also find lots of spiders and lots of insects. So that's often why carnivorous plants are called carnivorous and not, as previously thought, insectivorous, because they catch many more things other than just insects themselves.
Oh, so you mean the pitcher plant could digest a frog?
Absolutely.
Or a salamander?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Probably it couldn't digest the bones themselves, but it usually digests all the soft material.
Wow.
Yeah. And lots of things other than just the enzymes aid in digestion. Many different organisms live inside the pitchers as a home. So there's a certain type of mosquito called the pitcher plant mosquito, which lays its eggs inside the pitcher, and the larvae consume whatever gets caught in there. Also, there's a pitcher plant midge that does the exact same thing. So the larvae consume a lot of the dead organisms that get found in there. And there's also a fly, a flesh fly, that lays its larvae inside the pitcher, and that also consumes. So it's not just enzymes that do the digesting,
Right.
there's a lot of the insects too. It has been theorized that insects and spiders, in fact, contribute to the pitcher plant system by excreting into the pitcher itself. So when they excrete into the pitcher, usually this excretion has high nitrogen content, so it would aid the pitcher a great deal if it were to be able to consume this. So it has been found that many insects do excrete into the pitchers, and it is possible that spiders do the same thing. So this excretion would be a form of already pre-digested material, so even better than catching insects and catching spiders, because it's already consumed for you.
So those spiders that are, it sounds like they're stealing from the pitcher plant might actually be helping the pitcher plant.
It is possible, and that's almost exactly what my thesis is based on, to try to figure that out. So I'll be working on that.
All right. Well, you'll have to let us know.